Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Writer Mom Life. It's Kay and Lee. Have a special guest today. This is the king of coffee, Brian Meeks.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Kenya. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing so well. I'm so glad that you were able to chat with me. I've been really excited for our segment because we've been friends for a good bit, and
Oh, yeah.
I'm in your Facebook group. I think I have like one of your books. Like I really really love and respect what you do. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what you write.
Absolutely. Well, my background is, I think it's an interesting story. I may be biased, but before January, well, it was January 1st, really, 2010, I didn't like writing. I thought writing was a punishment given by college professors when, do a 20-page paper. Oh, I absolutely hated it because I had an eighth grade English teacher who was mean, and she sort of beat any possible love I had for writing out of me until I was 42 years old. Then on January 1st, I was bored. I loved college football. And on that day, the game I wanted to watch didn't kick off for a few hours. So I was bored. And as one does, I was surfing around the World Wide Web, as we called it back in the day. And I found a site called Blogger. So the day before, I had created this, I'm a woodworker, or I was a beginning woodworker, and trying to learn how to do woodworking. It's something I'd always wanted to do. I finally took it up. There's an old adage in woodworking: measure twice, cut once. Well, the day before, I had measured the legs for my workbench twice and cut them once. And when I woke up and looked at their lengths, I had legs of 3 different lengths. And I realized that you shouldn't measure twice while watching college football. And so that was the gist of my foible in woodworking. And so I wrote a blog post about it, a simple little 500 word or so. Moved on and went to a forum that was all about woodworking called Lumberjacks. And there the people were really good woodworkers doing all these amazing projects. And so I signed up. There was a button that said blog. So I pasted the woodworking blog. And the next day when I went back, 300 people had read the post because I'm snarky and left really nice comments. This is the funniest thing. I've been here 5 years. So I went from hating writing to all of a sudden, ooh, external validation. This feels warm and fuzzy. So I did it again. And I just kept doing it as blog posts until the end of the month, when I wrote the first chapter of my Henry Wood detective series, I wrote 4 of those books before I decided to publish any of them, all as blog posts, just one chapter at a time. And that's something that if you're a new author, then it can be overwhelming to think about writing an entire novel. 40, 50,000 words is a lot, especially when you remember your college days of, write a 5,000 word paper and you were dreading it. Well, 50,000 sounds 10 times worse.
Yes.
But I just started with, you know what? I can't write 50,000 words, but I can write 1,000 words 50 times.
Oh, I love that.
And so I just kept doing it, and that got me started. I write across 6 genres and nonfiction, which is why you and I know each other, because of my nonfiction books about this business. And it just, after Henry Wood got launched, I didn't have a ton of sales. I maybe made $250 the first year, but it was $250 of profit from people that didn't know me, because it's amazing how friends and family just don't care. I mean, I've been a full-time author for years now, and my friends, they haven't read my books. My mom and dad have. My sister hasn't. Yeah, she doesn't care. And so that's where I got my start. I really love fiction. I'm working on my 20th novel now.
Congrats.
I've written 6 nonfiction books. 5 of them are about the business of being an author. I co-wrote 3 with Honoré Quarter, and then the 2 that I think you bought one of them, Mastering Amazon Ads and then Mastering Amazon Descriptions. And it's the latter book, which is why I'm here today. And so I've been able to do a number of different things that have allowed me to quit my day job. And being an author is kind of awesome.
It
seems awesome, but it's actually as awesome as advertised. So that's my background. It was a long story, but this is what I do and I love it. And part of that is being on shows like yours and helping other authors who aren't as familiar with the ins and outs, because now I've been doing this 10 years. So I've learned a few things.
Yes, I love that. And that's what we're talking about today. We're doing pro tips for selling books. And one of the most powerful factors in marketing your book is the sales copy. And that's something that really caught my attention with Brian. I remember seeing you on Facebook and it caught me immediately. And this is what you do. You wrote it in this way that was just like, I have to stop and figure out what he's saying, because he has a very specific style, which I've adapted from studying his method. And it really has helped me convert more books into sales, like changing it works. And I love it. Changing my descriptions on my backlist have really, really helped from your method. So yeah.
Well, the part of my background, and this I think illuminates how I went from writing a description the way everybody does it, just a synopsis of the book, to the way I do it now, was a process. Mm-hmm. One common thread among many authors, certainly a majority, is they hate writing the blurb, the description for their book. Oh, I'll write 100,000 word epic fantasy, but 300 words to try to sell it is like going to the dentist. It's just, it's painful. People don't like it. And I didn't either. My whole journey down this path of understanding copywriting began because I had a book ready to go. It was, the cover art was done. It was edited. My beta readers had returned it. I had made the corrections. It was, my ISBN was registered. I had it all loaded into Amazon, ready to hit publish. I needed to do one thing, the description. Oh, I didn't want to do the description. Oh, Kenya, the pain was so excruciating because I hated them. I hated them so much. And so I said, yeah, it's true. I hate to make blanket statements, but if you ask 100 authors, I bet 90, maybe 85 of them will say, yes, I hate it. And I said, I'll do it tomorrow, because things we don't like are always better to procrastinate on.
Yeah.
I said that every day for 60 days.
Oh, wow.
I just didn't publish because I didn't want to write that description. At the 16-day mark, 2 months, a little alarm in my head said, this is ridiculous. Do it. So I wrote this terrible description, one block of text, and I hit published, and I was, so relieved. Thank you. And my little voice, now understand this, Kenya. I'm an optimist. My little voice is not one of those ones that tears me down or bashes me. I've never suffered from imposter syndrome. It's an optimist and always tells me nice things about me. But in this instance, the little voice said, okay, are you kidding me? 60 days. And that's what you came up with? It's horrible. This is, you've got to think about what you've done. And I did. And I was like, you know what? This just isn't good. And I have a friend. There's a show called the Self-Publishing Podcast. I know those guys really well. And Sean Platt was a world-class copywriter before he left that to try his hand at fiction. And he's done very well at fiction and nonfiction. And he's a friend. And I thought, well, I know a copywriter. So I sent him a message and I told him the story I just told you. I need a book, Sean. Can you recommend something? And he recommended Sugarman's book, which is admittedly dated. It's called Adweek. And it's about copy from the 60s and 70s, print copy, advertising digital watches and things along that lines. But the theory holds. And so I started reading, and I went from, when I redid my descriptions, like you said with yours, it improved the conversion rate. I'm a former data analyst with Geico. So I'm very much about numbers, and I had my numbers. I knew what my conversion rates were for all my books. And I think at the time I had maybe 7 of them or 10. I launched a 3-book series right around that time. And I rewrote the descriptions, and I knew that what my old description, my conversion rate was. And as soon as I rewrote them using the ideas from Sugarman's book, it went from 1 in 30 to 1 in 12, which
That's
is
great.
massive. If you're paying for clicks, would you rather pay for 12 clicks or 30? And even people that don't like math know the answer to that question. So I watched it and then started researching more. And the point where it really clicked for me, to where I went from initially hating descriptions to, okay, this isn't so bad. I saw the profit, how much more I was making each month, and okay, this is pretty good. But it really clicked for me when I started practicing copywriting on Facebook. And that's how you became aware of me, because anyone listening to this has been on Facebook. And you know that if your friend posts a story and it's 15 lines in a single block of text, you like it or you give it a heart, but you don't read it. Nobody does. And I realized it's because Facebook has fractured our attention spans. We live in this like, love, click, scroll, comment, move on world now.
Yeah.
And so reading 15 lines of text is a burden. Why would you do that to me? But if we open up with a hook, so imagine somebody has posted a picture of their new puppy. I would reply to their picture instead of just saying, "Oh," or "That's cute." I'd say, "Every 500 years, ... And then a blank line, ... A puppy of such adorableness comes along that few people can even stand it. This is one of those such puppies." And then, and on another line, and then, "It's so fuzzy!" ! More pictures! And so I do these lines, and those silly multi-line comments with hooks and misusing of ellipses, they will get more likes and loves and reply comments than any other comment on that post. So I started doing it with longer posts in the 20 books to 50K group. And I went from 12 comments and 50 likes or loves answering somebody's question about ads to 300 to 500 comments and 500 to my best is 1,600 likes and loves.
Oh, I love that.
That's on a post that is between 488, I think is my shortest one, to over 1,500 words on a Facebook post, getting 300 to 500 comments.
That's amazing.
And it is, and it's the power of copywriting. So that's sort of my path. And then as far as it applies to descriptions, that 1 in 12, after about a year, I thought, you know what, I've gotten better. So I continued to practice and try different techniques, using hooks in between paragraphs to keep a reader moving. And that's the first takeaway that your listeners should think about, is when a person lands on your Amazon page, you have 5 lines above the fold. That's the read more. I call it above the fold. And you want to have short lines. It shouldn't be that much information. Now, the old marketing world always tried to pack as much as they could above the fold.
Right.
That was the theory. Well, here we don't have enough space to really convince a reader to buy a book, but we do have enough space to convince them to click read more.
Mhm.
So conceptually, I want your audience to think about, how do we get them to click read more? Because if they don't click read more, they're not going to buy from that opening bit.
Yeah.
If they don't click read more, you've lost them. So
Yeah.
the goal of the opening line or the opening lines is to get them to click read more. And so an example from Henry Wood Detective Agency. Henry knew one thing, ... blank line, ... Again, that's not the correct way to use ellipses. You don't use two of them.
Right.
Dames were trouble, period. Blank line. Would this client be the exception? Question mark. Okay, so what we have there is, first off, nobody is going to read Henry knew one thing ... and stop reading. We can't. We're not going to leave on a cliffhanger. What was the one thing? So
Yes.
they go to the next line. Dames were trouble. Okay, well, maybe that's funny. Maybe it's not. But the word dames is key because we haven't used the word dame in 70 years. I mean, do you ever hear anybody say,
Never.
yeah, I went on a date with this dame last night. She was a doll. We just don't do that. So that one word, without specifically mentioning it, and the fact that the cover art is Art Deco, speaks to it being not contemporary. This is a historical piece of fiction. And then the next line, because they've been short, their eyes see it. It takes almost no effort to process this. Would this client be the exception? Question mark. Well, it's pretty hard to quit reading on a question because we're curious as a species. Humans want to know. So they click read more. And that's the only job of that opening bit. And then the description goes on, and I use more hooks and more intrigue. I use language that fits for the period. There's a line in there. She wore a Dior dress that would make an hourglass self-conscious. That's a good line. It paints a picture.
That's a great line.
And nobody's used that sort of language since the dime store novels of the 50s. So I get a lot done with very few words. And when they get to the end, that description converts at 1 in 8. It only takes 8 people reading it for me to get a new reader. And that's extraordinary.
That is extraordinary. And I love how you get your numbers. Like, that's awesome. I need to pay more attention.
Well, that's an area where a lot of authors, they don't like the data.
Right.
Because there's an irony in that a lot of our authors are artistic. They do other artistic things.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get into the book business, your creative side for storytelling, with fiction at least, is important.
Yes.
But this is a business. And if you want to have readers, even if you don't like money, and it's like, oh, I don't care about the money, I just want people to read the book, that's fine. But whether your goal is to be able to pay your bills with book royalties, or just get 10,000 people who love your story and you make them happy, they're both fine goals. But the path to that goal is the same. You need to know your numbers. So anyone listening right now, if I were to ask you, what's your conversion rate on paid clicks for your description? If you don't know that number, then you're really doing your business a disservice. For instance, Kenya, I don't know this. Do you have children? I don't.
I do. I have 2.
Okay. So if something happened and you were in the emergency room with one of your children and the doctor said, what's the blood type? If you didn't know, they would test for it and they would find out, because you don't just make medical decisions and guess on what type of blood to give somebody, because it could kill them. Well, if you're running ads on your book and you don't know what the conversion rate is, then you don't have any idea what your maximum bid could be to break even. And so you're throwing money out there, hoping that in 60 days, when you add up the amount you spent and the amount you got in, that it'll be profitable. But if you know that your conversion rate is 1 in 10, and you know that you convert it 1 in 8, and you know that on average, a new reader, because you have multiple books in the series and you know what the read through is, you know that if you get 100 new readers, 50 of them will buy book 2 or download it on Kindle Unlimited, and you know how much you earn on average from the page reads and all these things. Now, it is a fair amount of math, but you only have to figure it out once.
Yeah.
Once you get that number and you know that my lifetime value for a new reader at this point in time with 3 or say 4 books in my series is $7.20, then knowing your conversion rate and knowing what you're paying per click, you can reasonably expect that 1 in 8, spending 30 cents, I'm getting $2.40. So my ROI over time should be around 200%. That's hugely important.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's look at a description that converts at the rate most descriptions convert at. Same lifetime value, $7.20. But if your description's converting at 1 in 30, now for every new customer, you're spending $9 to get $7.20 back. That's bad. Don't do that.
Yeah. Don't do that, guys.
But the important thing is to understand that if your description is at 1 in 30 and you're watching this show, you know that it can be as good as 1 in 8. That's the best I've seen. Now, of course, there's conversion rates in different scenarios. If a book is free, well, your conversion rate's a lot better, but of course you don't get any revenue on the free book.
Yeah.
And read through from free books is maybe 2 to 5% if you have really good back matter. 2 to 5% is different than 50%. So I didn't mean to make this show into this big math thing.
It's okay.
But I wanted to illustrate that understanding the numbers is important. And even if great question. Ms. Fischer, I will address that in just a moment. The point is understanding these numbers can get you more safely from where you are now to full-time author or whatever your goal is. So would you like to read the question here from D. Fischer?
Yeah. So the question is, the new feature where we can see the Kindle Unlimited, how accurate is it? Should we be paying attention to it? And if so, what can we take from it on a daily view, for lack of better terms?
First off, I would like to give Ms. Fischer an A+ on the question. That was fantastic.
It is a good question.
So for those that are listening that may not be familiar with Kindle Unlimited, let me just say this is the Netflix of books, where a reader who reads a lot can subscribe, and each month they pay a fee and they can download as many books as they want. If they download one of my books and it has 300 pages, then I make just under $1.50 because we get paid per page read if they read the whole thing. That's an estimate. It's a little less than that. But the point is, Ms. Fischer is asking, on the AMS ads page where we have our report, we run an ad. It tells us our clicks, how much we spent. It also has a number of orders. And I made a face there. I'll explain that in a moment. And they've just added the functionality where they are associating the number of pages read to that ad, which is incredibly helpful if it is accurate. Now, historically, the one thing that people should keep in mind is that it says right on the Amazon ads page that it can take up to 14 days for data to show up. So, as an example, your ad, maybe it has 100 clicks today, and those clicks show up tomorrow. Now, keep in mind that those clicks, that your cost, that goes right to your billing immediately. So that doesn't always line up. but you may have had 3 orders and 7 Kindle Unlimited downloads from those 100 clicks if it's a 1 in 10 converting description. So now imagine there's 10 people out there that have Ms. Fischer's new book, and 3 of them bought it, and 7 of them got it through Kindle Unlimited. Now, historically, those 3 orders, Amazon has been less than great at reporting them. Say there were no more clicks, so you turn the ad off and you just waited 14 days. It is possible all 3 would show up after 14 days. Maybe. It might only be 1 of them. So I don't necessarily trust the orders number. Because of that, the Kindle Unlimited page number, I don't necessarily trust either. That being said, it is still something that is great that you can use as a really quick guide. You can look in and say, okay, I've increased my spend. I'm seeing trending upwards. So if you were tracking, so Miss Fischer has a book 1 of her series, a guinea pig adventure series. And so, Revenge of the Guinea Pig is doing well. And she sees that there's 1,000 page reads a day for 3 days. And then she ups her ad spend and it starts to trend upward. That's a positive sign. And you should be looking for trends, but you should be making your decisions, your end of the day analysis with using the KDP report. And the KDP report is where we see the actual number of sales, which is different than orders. Every now and then an order will come through, and for whatever reason, the payment didn't go through, so it never turns into a sale. That's rare, but it does happen. The point being, you look at your actual sales that you get and your actual page reads, and then do your calculations from those numbers. Because for most authors, the 98%, there isn't that much in the way of organic sales. There are authors, the Craig Martells of the world, who do high volume and have really high ranking of their books. And so they do get organic sales. But for most people, if you had a sale or if you got a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, there's a direct correlation between that and the clicks. So to answer the question, you can look at it from a daily view to get a general sense of things are going in the right direction, but always try to do your analysis for a 30-day time period and look at an entire 30 days worth of page reads and an entire 30 days worth of sales and an entire 30 days worth of clicks. Because while some people will download a book and read it in a day, other people might take 2 weeks. Some might take 3 because we have busy lives dealing with the zombie apocalypse. And so you want to make sure to look at your data several ways. It was a really good question, Ms. Fischer. And how awesome would it be if she really did? Yes. So in a sense, it's good, but don't rely totally on it. That is correct. And we don't know what Ms. Fischer writes. I would love it if she was writing Guinea Pig Adventure, though. So if you're thinking of branching out, you would have a Guinea Pig Adventure reader with me.
So cute. Thank you so much for answering her question. That was a really good question because that's a new feature, and I've been trying to keep track of it as well. And it is kind of, like you said, it is like a delay. So yeah.
and the problem with a 14-day delay is we're never making decisions with full knowledge. So whenever you're making the decision, it's right now.
Yeah.
And that decision has to be made with enough data that you're comfortable knowing it was the correct decision. Something that's happened to me a fair amount is I get a lot of people that reach out to me and ask questions, which I love. I encourage it. I think authors are great. There's really, all I want to do is sit and chat with authors.
I love that.
And they will say, hey, Brian, do you mind looking at some of my data? And I always like looking at data. So I say, yes. Can you look at this? And they'll show me a screenshot. I canceled a bunch of, or I terminated a bunch of these ads. Can you look at it and tell me if I made the right decision. Well, something for people who haven't used AMS ads that you need to understand is when you terminate an ad, you can't turn it back on. So
Yeah.
they're asking me if they made the right decision at a point where if my answer is no, there's nothing they can do about it. So that's a bad idea. If you're thinking of doing something drastic, like pulling down a series, relaunching it, killing a ton of ads that you're not sure if they're working, ask for help before you pull the trigger, because you can't go back in time. And so the problem is that 90% of the time when people say, hey, I terminated this ad, what do you think? They're wrong. It was a good ad.
Yeah.
And so it is almost never that they terminated a decent ad. And then we will spend 30 minutes or an hour going through the data, and I'll show them, see, because of the data delay and all, this is really what you were doing and it was profitable. So no, you shouldn't have done that. And next time, ask me before you do it. So this all goes back to the math. And again, I didn't want to turn this into a math is great show, but this is a business. Whether you're
business, yes,
you have to take it seriously. And the people that earn 5 figures a month, and I know a dozen authors who make 6 figures a month. That's $100,000 every single month. And unless you're an author in one of their groups, if you were to walk down the street and ask 100 people, have you heard of, and then list one of my 12 friends, maybe 1% of them have even heard of these authors. The market is so big, you can make $1 million a year. And aside from your fan base, nobody's heard of you.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
that's something to think about when people are wondering, should I give it a try? Yes, because there's lots of readers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's an audience for all of us. So I definitely encourage anyone who's looking to write and make a career of it, do it. 100% do it. I wish I would have done it sooner.
Yes. Well, I'm curious because I don't know. I mean, we have been friends for a while, but I don't know how long you've been an author. When did you write your first book? When did when were some of these milestones?
Yeah. So I wrote my first book actually when I was 11 on my mom's typewriter. And
oh, that's fantastic.
I loved it. I felt like a real author.
That is cool.
And I would have gotten published sooner if I would have gotten over my fear sooner of that fear of
what I mentioned that earlier, the whole imposter syndrome thing.
You never had it.
No, because I just am a huge fan of Brian Meeks, and I give that credit to my parents. My parents were always supportive when I played sports, and they always cheered for me. That they were never. Now, this is not to say that at periods in my life when I did things that were stupid, they weren't honest. If I was going down a path, but they would always do it in such a way that's like, well, we're not really sure that's a good idea, but
They sound lovely.
They are. My parents are delightful.
Aww.
And so I would do something stupid, and it's like, oh, okay, you were right on that one. And then I do something stupid again. And then sometimes I would do things that seem stupid. For instance, I quit my day job at Geico as a data analyst to pursue building stuff in the virtual world of Second Life. Now,
oh my gosh, wow.
I did that for about 18 months and I made a lot of money. My first contract was $97,000. So
that's amazing.
That was something where mom and dad were like, we don't even know what that means. Second what? Yeah, but I made good money at Geico. And they're like, this I don't understand. And admittedly that dried up, and then I was poor for a number of years. I lived below the poverty line. I started writing in 2010. I first published in late 2012 or maybe it was 2011. But I made the decision to cut back from working 4 days a week to 2 days a week at a different job so I could write 5 days a week. And because I live in, or at the time I lived in this house where I'm at now for the zombie apocalypse is is my grandfather's old house, and they had not lived in it in years. So this is where I hung out. I had very few expenses, and I could afford to only eat ramen noodles and eggs to pursue
Wow.
writing. And that was okay. I don't have children. I don't have a girlfriend or wife that, I didn't have other commitments. So I was able to
Yeah.
pursue my dream. And the thing about the book business is, and we'll get to Susan's question in just a moment. The thing about the book business that is hard for a lot of people is the response they get from the people that matter most to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, when I started writing, because I was writing them as blog posts, my parents were my two biggest fans. And my dad, he was so excited about every new chapter. And so when I said I wanted to do this crazy thing, live on $800 a month and just, be incredibly poor to pursue the book business, they were like, yeah, you really should. There wasn't a moment of them saying, you're a good writer. We love your books. Go for it. And so that is an advantage I had that very few authors had. But
That's beautiful.
I want to tell a story really quickly. And then again, I won't forget you, Susan. I had this friend, one of those 12 that I mentioned that's very successful. And she knew she wanted to pursue writing. And she knew her family was one of those naysayers. Everybody, that's who they were. And no matter what you did in life, it was always tear down your brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. They all did it.
Yeah.
So one day at Thanksgiving, and I won't give her name because I'm giving away some data, but at Thanksgiving, they're a huge family. So they're all gathered around the giant table, the matriarch of the family, the grandmother's at the head of the table. They're talking, and she's just being part of the crowd. And then somebody asked, so what are you doing now? And she said, oh, I quit my job a couple of years ago. I've been writing novels. And they all just, yo, starving artists. Oh my, and they were a family of means. And so, I'm not going to pay for you for that. Yeah. And she just sat there and took it. She just let them go until they sort of ran. And so then finally somebody asked, so what are you going to do for money? And she said, well, I've been a New York Times bestseller. I think at that point it was like, I've had 7 New York Times bestsellers, 12 USA Today bestsellers. Last month, and for the past 6 months, I've made over $100,000 a month. And there was silence. The naysayers had nothing more. And she said, for 30 seconds, it was just a quiet room. People wouldn't look at her. They were defeated. And she just sat there enjoying her Thanksgiving dinner, and nobody ever, because she was hugely successful. So I tell that story for those of you out there that maybe haven't started and you're worried because your brother is going to find fault. That's who he is. Just don't tell him. Yes. You can write under a pen name. You can do it for years as a secret. And if you eliminate that potential stress that could be devastating, it could be good. So now you want to read Susan's question?
Sure. Hello. Do you write blurbs? I've rewritten my blurbs, but my first chapters always seem to convert better. Any advice?
Yes. Well, I do write blurbs. I charge $150 for a description, and you can find me in my Facebook groups. You can DM me on Facebook, Brian D. Meeks. I'm wearing this hat. Now,
I'll
as far
put all your info in the video as well.
Yes. And so I'm not sure what Susan means by her chapters always seem to convert better. I don't know.
You want to clarify, Susan?
Yeah.
I think that she might mean that they might feel like the blurb is like not very good, but they'll give it a shot and like read a few chapters and be like, okay, like maybe
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, is your headphones plugged in? Because I'm getting a feedback loop, and I wasn't at the beginning.
Yeah. Do you still hear it?
Okay, let me talk. And so no, now I don't. I think it came
Okay.
unplugged
Okay.
because for a bit I was hearing myself and it was confusing me.
Okay.
I'm easily startled and confused. So uh yes, I do have some advice. Well, aside
It
from
says on Facebook ads.
I rewrite my uh chapters. Oh, she says on Facebook ads.
So I think she's saying she puts her chapters in the ads instead of her blurbs. Like her
Oh,
copy
oh
is her chapter. Like she puts like a whole chapter.
okay. Well, that's presumably she's then doing Facebook ads because I don't think there's space to put a chapter in Amazon ads. Well, I know there isn't. And
Maybe
so,
she's doing boosted posts.
okay, yeah, maybe that is. Let me answer this as best I can. And Susan, if I miss the mark, just ask another question. So when I do ads, I test with the blurbs and with first chapter in the primary text. Are these Facebook or Amazon?
She says Facebook.
Oh, okay. Then that makes sense. Well, first chapter is the first thing I would say is what is your conversion rate? Because as I mentioned earlier, and I don't know if you were listening to the show at this time, a good description, the ones that I write convert at 1 in 8 to 1 in 10. So use that as your benchmark. And then look at how the chapter is converting and look at how the description is converting. Now, the description, if you put the chapter in there, the description is still part of the conversion process because one wants to understand that the Facebook ad doesn't sell the book. The Facebook ad sells the idea of them considering the book when they get to Amazon. And then if the description is poor on Amazon, you won't convert. If it has, say, 3 giant blocks of text as a synopsis of the book, that will convert at 1 in 30. And that's what almost everyone does. If it does not have a call to action at the end, which is something along the lines of, you'll love this guinea pig mystery because Fluffy is adorable and a sleuthing genius. Get it now. So that little bit, people don't realize that humans, at least since the age of television, have been exposed to calls to action every day. So dozens, if not hundreds of times a day, there's an ad and there's always something where they're asking us to buy. And that's been, for most of us, our entire lives. So we are programmed to expect the call to action to be there. Now, for those that say, oh, it feels sleazy, like I'm trying to sell the book. Well, yes, you are trying to sell the book because you told a good story and you think that if they buy the book, it will make them happy. So selling's a good thing. But the call to action isn't really where you're selling the book. That has happened with the copy and the intrigue you build up to the call to action. You'll love because, you and because are 2 of the 5 most powerful copywriting words. And I could do 15 minutes on that. I won't, but you go from the narrator talking about the guinea pig mystery to you. And now they're speaking directly to me, Brian Meeks. I'm the reader of the description. You will love this because Fluffy's adorable. Well, I love guinea pigs and yes, absolutely. The get it now isn't where they decide. That wasn't the linchpin. That wasn't the moment where it tipped the scales. The scales have already tipped. They're either buying it or not. The get it now is just a stop sign. It's an indicator that, yes, it is time. You've already made your decision. Now, if you decide you want to read the book, go download it, go buy it. Or if not, go click on another ad because this wasn't right for you. And understand that a description that converts 1 in 10 fails 90% of the time. A conversion, one that's 1 in 30 fails 96.6%, 96.3. I don't know. I should know that number, but
that's amazing. You know that.
that little difference of going from 96, 97% failure to 1 in 90 failure. When I went from that range to the better range, I looked at my historical data from the previous year, and if I had improved my conversion rate, now that previous 12 months I had made about $30-some thousand. I think I was thinking it was my 107,000 year, but it wasn't. It was the year before that. So I'd done pretty well. I mean, the best year of my life was 33,000, I think it was. But I went back and I looked at if all those clicks had converted at the new conversion rate, I left $60,000 on the table. Mm-hmm. So I would have been closer to like 90, 92,000 if I had learned copywriting 12 months earlier. That's a lot of money. And the point is, these little details matter. And so when I first started, I didn't have the "you'll because" in my call to action at the end. My call to action wasn't "get it now." The reason we want "get it now" is it's short. I hate it. This is a personal pet peeve. Makes me a little fussy. When somebody's call to action, and I see this with people that sell, that do 20, 30, 50,000 a month, and I see their call to action and it says, scroll up and one click now to get started on the Great Guinea Pig Adventure. Well, that's not where they're not saying, oh, well, I wasn't considering buying this, but you told me to scroll up and you explained to me how to buy a book on Amazon. And the fact that I read 5 books a week from Amazon shouldn't be an indicator that I know what I'm doing. Basically, what they're saying, if I translate it, is, hey, you've gotten to this point. I'm assuming you're stupid. Let me teach you how to buy a book on Amazon. You see the mouse? You're going to want to scroll up. And there's an area where you can decide to purchase my book. And yes, I know you've been doing it 5 times a week for the last 3 years, but I still think you haven't learned. So I just find it insulting. Don't do that. It's just a sign. It's just an indicator that says, hey, it's time. Either go somewhere else or get started on my book, but there's nothing else that I can offer you that's going to change your mind. And so that was a long answer. Susan has another question. Go. You want to read that?
Is there another question? I don't see it.
Oh, it says, when I do ads, I test with the blur. Oh, no, that was the one that was the one I already did. And so to answer your question, you should, if your description doesn't have opening hooks, something that grabs their attention to make them click read more, and if your paragraphs are 3, 4, 5 lines long, that's too long. Get them to 2 to 2.5 lines. In between paragraphs, try to have some sort of hook to keep them moving. If that's not how your description's designed, redo it, or hire me to redo it. And then your idea about testing your description in the Facebook ad versus the first chapter is a good one, but I wouldn't use the description. I would write a different bit of copy, maybe 150 words, sort of a second description, something intriguing, and test that against the first chapter and see which one has the better CTR, because that's what you're trying to figure out with Facebook. You want to know which one gets the most clicks, and then the superior one, you leave that and go to the description that converts at 1 in 10. So I got sidetracked there, Susan. I'm sorry about that. I have been known to get off on a tangent. And so
that was all lovely information. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions out there?
Any more questions, guys?
Well, what about you, Kenya? Any questions? Anything about the book business? Or math or Excel?
I'm gonna pass on the math one.
Are you one of those people that doesn't care for math?
I mean, I do check my conversion rates and everything. So I tolerate it because it is a business, like you said, and I've been doing this full time for a long time, and this is my main source of my main source of outcome. So yeah, I have to
Okay.
check these things.
Well, let me ask you this though.
Yes.
Do you consider yourself to be strong with math? Or are you somebody that has always disliked it and so you consider yourself to be weak at math?
I'm pretty strong at it, but it's never been my favorite. I
Okay.
actually did quite well in college in math, but I'm like, this is not the funnest thing for me.
Well, I asked that because it doesn't happen very often, but occasionally I meet people like you who are good at math.
Yeah.
They just don't like it. And that is absolutely fine. I have no
Mhm.
problem with that at all. I love math. Sometimes I will just look up algebra problems and do them because it
Oh,
makes me happy. So this is a little insight for your
that
listeners
makes
as
me
to why I'm
happy.
53 years old and don't have a woman in my life. That's the clue there. But for those out there that just don't like math, I'd like to share something in that I believe the reason you don't like math is because of the methodologies the teachers used when you were little.
Yeah.
If we had, just like with me with writing, I had a mean English teacher
Mhm.
and I stopped liking writing. Turns out I was good at it.
Mhm.
Math, if it was stressful for you, then it's very easy to not like it at an early age. And as a society, I don't know that it's this way in other countries. I just don't know. But in America, we do this terrible thing to our girls. We tell them girls can't do math. And I wrote a 20-page paper in college refuting that, where there's a famous book out, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I don't know if have you
Mhm.
heard of it?
I have, yes.
Okay.
Long
Well,
time ago.
the premise of the book is that our minds are different. And yes, it has been shown that the brains of a woman and a man do, in some areas of the brain, perform tasks differently. That's absolutely true. What is not true is the area of the brain that does analytics and mathematics have been shown to be identical.
Oh, yeah.
There is not a difference between the woman's brain and the men's brain when it comes to math. And there's the show about the movie about the NASA women, uh,
Hidden Figures.
Hidden Figures, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
They were brilliant mathematicians. So I could talk at length about how that is not
Yeah.
true. And I wrote 20 pages on it. But the point is, it doesn't matter if it's not true. If you're an 8-year-old girl and your mom that you adore looks at your report cards and you got all A's and a C in math, and she says, "It's okay, honey, girls can't do math." Doesn't matter what the truth is, you listen to her. And that is a disservice we do to the girls and young women of this country, is they don't know that it's fine. And I think we're addressing that. There's a lot of people pressing for more women in STEM courses, and I think it's improved it a lot. But
Yeah.
for those of you out there that happen to be women who maybe had this happen when you were young and still to this day hate math, I have seen many authors come through my course or read my book on ads that have said to me, "Brian, I don't like math." And we talked about it. Yeah, it was probably when I was young. I grew to hate it. And I said, well, keep in mind that the math that I'm teaching is 5th grade math, maybe 7th grade. It's very basic math.
Mm-hmm.
So give it a try. And when they go back and they do it, and a lot of them have had children and have had to do 5th and 7th grade math with their kids.
Yeah.
So this isn't the master's degree stuff. This isn't college level math. This is basic stuff. And when they realize that it's not the scary math, it's the stuff that they really can do, and they start to calculate some of these things, and then they make decisions, and they see the amount that they're making per month from their books grow, suddenly they may not love math, but they realize it's a skill set that they have, and they can implement it when they need to for the good of their business, and it's no longer unpleasant. So you have the skill to do math. You can do it. You don't need to love it like me. A couple summers ago, because MIT has all their courses online, I went
Mm-hmm.
through like a first year algebra course just because it was fun.
Just for fun.
Yeah. And
That
so,
was that was like,
but I hope people appreciate that. And so if you're one of those people that say, I hate math, I hate math, I hate math, or worse, I can't do math. Every person that said that to me, and sometimes this is in bars where people will say that to me, and I'll say, no, I bet you can. And I will, and within a half hour, I have taught them and shown them that they can solve pretty tough questions. So a person that wouldn't be good at math, if I said, what's 17% of 350? And they say, I have no idea. I couldn't do that without a calculator. And then I say, what's 17% of 100? Well, that's 17. Everybody knows that. Well, what's 17 times 3? Well, that's a little tougher, but it's 51. Well, what's 17, half of 17, which would be the 17% of the 50? And they think about that for a bit. And then, well, 8 times 2 is 16. So it must be 8.5. I'm like, yes, that's correct. So what's 51 plus 8.5? 59.5. You just solved 17% of 350 in your head. And I've seen that light bulb come on where, so it wasn't you, it wasn't your brain. It was nobody taught you to think about that type of problem in that way. And all problems can be taught in a different way so you understand them. So I hope people will at least not be afraid to try it.
I love
this has turned into Brian Meeks lecturing and ranting about math.
Master class.
Admittedly, it's not my first time, Kenya, doing this on a show. I'm a repeat math offender. But
you've been so lovely. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I can't wait to come on yours. Do you want to tell everyone? Well, I'll post your links because
yes,
your show hasn't launched yet, but
Brian, it isn't launched yet. And I will definitely have you on the show because you're delightful. And I'm not going to tell the listeners what advice you gave me earlier, but I'm going to go take action on that advice now. I'm very excited. So
you're so welcome. Let me know how that goes.
I will. And so thanks for having me on the show, Kenya.
You're welcome. Have a lovely day.
Bye.
And everyone, check out Brian. I'm going to leave his information in the description. So like and subscribe. Bye.